one and all. Tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide.
Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your source for the best in RPG interviews, your RPG treasure trove. I am your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and joining us this evening, ladies and gentlemen, it is his first time doing a show like this, talking about RPGs specifically. You guys know him from his work with Planet X Games, from his work with Jim Wampler, who we had on last week. He is the master of robots, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Bickford. Ed, welcome to Rollin' Bones.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is our pleasure. I've seen and admired so much of your work, and one thing I'll say about all of the art that you do, it's very evocative. It very much gets the imagination going as soon as you see it. So it'll be cool to talk with you a little bit about this, especially since, as we already said, this is the first time you've been able to, come on something like this and discuss the RPG side of things.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Ed, we're going to kick things off with a couple questions that everyone usually gets asked. Now, these questions are very heavily tailored to people who play a lot of RPGs, do a lot of that stuff, and as you told me before we did this, you have not played RPGs in a long, long time, so why don't we start with kind of that first exposure to RPGs? What is your level of exposure to the hobby besides working in it now?
I think there was a kid down the road that was a DM, and I played with him a little bit, and I liked playing it so much that I actually went out and bought the red box set, the old where you only had you could only be a dwarf, an elf, a thief, and a fighter, I think it was. And I did that, and then I didn't really play that much more in high school, but when I got in the Air Force, we had a group I played with a lot. We played every Sunday. And we played that quite a bit. And I think when I got out of the Air Force, and they had, I can't remember what the name of the program was, but it was like a chat program, and you could they had buttons you could hit, and it would actually roll the dice for the DM, for everyone to see what the numbers were in the chat room. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if it was a voice room or if it was just chat, but I played that, and I was the DM for a few times in that, and it was pretty fun. And that was the last time. A lot of times, just between life and kids and making art, I haven't played that much lately.
Gotcha. So it was just a matter of, separation from the hobby because of other things, not
right.
A particular incident that made you throw your PHB on the ground and go, that's it, I'm done.
Oh, no. Loved playing D&D. It was quite fun.
Gotcha. Have any of the people that you've worked with, obviously you've worked with Levi Combs, Jim Wampler, a bunch of great people like that. Have any of them tried to get you involved in any games that they were running or anything like that?
No, I think Levi wants me to show up because he wants to show up to North Texas. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go to have an art table to sell art, but I think Levi wants me to show up to play games. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. I'll be at that show too. So if you are there, Whether you have an art table or whether you are there to play some games, hopefully we'll be able to see you there.
Oh yeah, I'm hoping. I'm supposed to get my first COVID shot here Wednesday, so I think once you get both my shots and stuff, I'll feel much better about going. But we'll see what's gonna happen. I got some other stuff I got to take care of before I can go.
Yeah,
like just
absolutely.
work.
Absolutely. So, the other question that I wanted to ask you that everyone gets asked on the show. Unfortunately, this is one of the more difficult questions that people get asked. It's flummoxed a couple people in the past. And I'll tell you, Ed, the answer to this can be as philosophical or as sophomoric as you want it to be. So, if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
A t-shirt? How about I'd rather be a smart ass than a dumbass.
Yeah.
There we go.
Absolutely. And if only we could find some way to incorporate some robots into that. Just
Oh yeah, I actually mine aren't clean. I have some metal robot shirts I had printed out, but I'm not good at doing laundry, so they're all in the dirty clothes.
Gotcha. So, and again, this may end up being kind of a big question because when it comes to stuff like this that people dedicate a lot of time to. It's often a big question, but we have to ask: how did you get into making art, and then how did you find yourself in a position where it could be a sort of professional gig for you?
I've been drawing since I can remember. I remember when I was a little kid, I drew a whole bunch of pictures of elves loading Santa Claus's sleigh, and I don't know how many sheets of paper I used and drew all these pictures, and I left them for Santa Claus. And I were getting them at Christmas. I wasn't worried about the Christmas presents. My pictures were still there, and I was so upset that Santa Claus didn't take the art I made him home with him. But I drew all the way through. I drew all the way through middle school and junior high and high school, through all my classes. I drew all the time. So I've been drawing since I can remember all the time. And professionally, I've made some stuff. I did some stuff for comics, and it really didn't really. And I did 13 years of comics. I was in the military for 10, then I worked for another 5 years after that. And I didn't get to use my GI Bill and go to art school until I was 33. And then my ex-wife left, and then I milled around and stuff. And then when I met my current wife, I was still working. And then we figured out that, we worked it out so I could go to art school finally. So I went to art school from when I was 33 to 37, and I got out and tried to find jobs, and I just couldn't find any art jobs and stuff. And I really wanted to draw comics for a while, but I did 13 years of comics, and it just kind of, I don't know, it didn't take, or my style or the things I liked were, are not spandex and superhero-y. And then I was at a Comic-Con one year at Wichita, and there was this guy walking around with a suit and a tie. It looked like he just got done coming from a banquet or something, right? And he was walking around talking to people, and he had, stringy, long blonde hair, and he was in a suit, and he was talking. I saw him, and he came up to me, and I was the only one that gave him the time of day, and he gave me his card. It was Casey Christopherson from Frog God Games. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one out of all the other comic book artists and stuff. I'm the only one that actually, took him serious and talked to him. And so, about 2 or 3 months later, it wasn't he that contacted me, it was Levi Combs, because Casey gave him my name. And so ever since then, I've been working with Levi. And when I did all that stuff for Levi, everyone's, they liked that work. So then next, Jim and Skeeter Green, and I feel bad if I forgot anyone else right now at the time. It started avalanche, or tidal wave. It's just getting more and more, and it's I'm enjoying it a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, how many years ago was that? It wasn't too terribly long ago, was it?
What?
Casey approaching you at the convention.
No, I want to say it was maybe 2019 in like November.
Gotcha.
19 or 18, I can't remember. It was before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been 18 because I think in 19 I saw Casey again at that same con, and he had his wife and kids with him. So it was probably 18, I think.
Did you do any work for Occurrence at Howling Crater?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Gotcha. So it was probably 2018, because right when I first encountered Levi, it was in 2019, and Occurrence, I think, had just come out, or the Kickstarter was wrapping up at that point. So
yeah, I did. I can't remember the names of the people. I think I did. Yeah, I did art for that one. I think that was the first one I did. Levi's gonna be mad. I can't remember anything. I asked him one day about something he's like, dude, he's like, the Kickstarter, we just ended the Kickstarter. You don't remember doing art for that book?
it's all right. If I need to, I've got most of his stuff over on my shelf, which is out of frame, unfortunately, but I can, if we need to reference it, I can go grab it. So
yeah, I think I've been in a lot of Casey stuff. I mean, Levi stuff, and I think I've been in all three. I want to say all three of Scientific Barbarian now for Jim, and I can't remember Skeeter's book, the Crypto Codex, I think it is.
Yep, Crypto Codex.
Yeah, I got some stuff in there, and then I hope nothing's escaping me. I think I have some stuff in the Swords and Wizardry box set.
Gotcha.
I think so. I can't remember. I did stuff for Necromancer and for Frog God before COVID hit. So
yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we talked about off air, just as we've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit before doing this, when I looked at your work for the first time, I saw a very distinct style. And when I kind of mentioned that to you, or you might have even been the one who brought it up, this style, this kind of old-fashioned sci-fi style that I immediately picked up on, you say you kind of fell into. It was not an intentional choice. So tell us a little bit about how that came about, how you, I guess, ended up boxed into that category or something. Like what was the intention, and how did the intention turn into what it is now?
Well, there was a year I was running behind on stuff, and I was going to go to Planet Comic-Con here, which is in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest Comic-Con in the Kansas City area. And time was, it was crunch time. I didn't have anything. And I had been drawing the robot pictures for my lunch art. And one of my buddies, he goes, why don't you just, he goes, you don't have time to make, write and do all the comic. He goes, why don't you just make a art book with just robots in it, with all your robot pictures? So I was like, well, that's a good idea. So I started making the robots, and I posted one of the finished pieces on Facebook. And one of my friends that used to live here in the area, he moved away, and he I guess he took it and he photoshopped one of the old sci-fi magazine titles on top of it. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it, and I just ran with it. I mean, I didn't realize I was already drawing that kind of retro looking stuff anyway. I was just doing my thing, just enjoying making art. And so I did that. And then the first book, my first book, it was called, I called it Robot Pulp. And I didn't know I was going to run with it. I was just going to make it art. It had pictures of the art in it, which were like faux, like fake, like old sci-fi magazine covers. And then I also put process pictures in it to show the process, step by step, or just certain process. And I didn't have time to do all the graphic design. So I paid a friend of mine. She was a graphic designer, and I had her do all the graphic design for it. And then it went over pretty well. And then so I made prints to go along with the book, and then I made a second book, and then I think I had her do. I think that one I tried to put comics in it, and then my buddy Aaron Walther, who's a writer, put a prose story in it. So we tried to make it kind of like more like a real magazine or whatnot. And she did the graphic design for that. And then I forget what happened. Something happened, and then I think I went off and I did a graphic novel that we got syndicated on Go Comics. And once we finished with that, I went back in and started making more robot pictures. And then this time I wanted to do the graphic design myself because I felt like it still didn't look old enough. So I'm on Pinterest, and I have a ton of stuff on. You ever been to Pinterest?
Yep.
And so I have quite a few boards on Pinterest, and they just have tons and tons and tons of old pulp and old sci-fi book covers and novel covers and magazine covers. And so I kind of look at that, and I was like, well, I can understand now why it looked cool, and it looked sort of old, but it didn't really look old enough just because I wasn't using the same colors or the same fonts, because we didn't have all the fonts we have now back then. So I started making my fonts more simpler and look like the time, and I used and I think the color kind of works out good because most of the colors I use are the colors that they used back then anyway. And so it just went from there, and I'm enjoying it. I like making it look like something you would find in a flea market on a book cover, or a novel or something. And then I guess also I never realized it, but some people have been saying that my comic book stuff looks like Kirby's artwork, and I've never really considered that because I just make this stuff. I don't really think of who I'm trying, of another artist or whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, drawing robots just in your spare time, is that kind of a big influence for you? Did you kind of grow up loving fiction involving robots and loving kind of that old pulp stuff, or how did that kind of enter your imagination, I guess?
Well, I try to look back, and there's a few things that I look back and I really liked. John Berkey was a sci-fi illustrator. I remember I carried his book around from the library at school for a while, and I didn't even know the guy's name until just recently, because I was like, oh, I remember that book, and I really don't remember any of the artists' names and stuff I was into as a kid. But what was it? I just lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
Kind of what was it that made you kind of drawing robots? How did that enter your imagination, that kind of stuff?
Well, I have a huge maintenance background. I did 10 years in the Air Force, all in maintenance, and then also when I got out, I fixed copiers, and I did, and I also worked at Chuck E. Cheese and fixed all their games and rides and stuff. So I have a huge maintenance background. So I always thought it's like, they always tell writers, write what you know. So I'm like, why not as an artist? Why don't I draw what I know? And what I know is, hoses and tubes and clamps and circuit boards and just all the mechanical stuff. And I like drawing the human figure, and I like drawing robots. They're just so much fun. I mean, just the pareidolia of a metal, thing to make it look human and work as a human, and think about all the hoses and clamps and just all the cool details that go into it. Mm-hmm. Eventually, one of these days, I'd like to get. I love rat rods, and I want to get some hot rod pulp going on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned kind of the mechanical background and loving drawing machinery because it's what you're familiar with. So I have to ask, since this artist was also known for his machinery and the detail that he would put into stuff like that, were you ever really drawn to the art of Herb Trimpe?
I recognize the name, but I can't put a picture to his artwork.
So he's a Marvel artist, kind of a journeyman, but he was most famous for the Hulk, and then later more famous for being the first artist on G.I. Joe.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was a big GI Joe fan when it first came out in the '80s, and I had a lot of their books.
Yeah, he and Larry Hama basically made GI Joe.
Oh, cool. No, around that time I was really into Frazetta and Boris Vallejo.
Gotcha.
They were like my gods, and I read I really didn't read that much that many comics. I read mostly I read was the Chris Claremont X-Men because it was awesome. Anything with Wolverine in it because I loved Wolverine. And then I read like a lot of Heavy Metal and Epic Magazine and Savage Sword of Conan, just adult titles, and a lot of stuff like I loved Mobius and a lot of the European illustrators and artists more than American stuff.
Gotcha. So even like back when you were still just consuming comics rather than creating them, you were drawn away from kind of the superhero genre.
Yeah, I don't know. They just couldn't. The X-Men were just so good. Chris Claremont's X-Men were just so good. And I tried to get into Alpha Flight and all the other little superhero groups, and I just couldn't. They just didn't have the same thing that the X-Men had,
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Frazetta and Vallejo, I definitely have a lot of love for. I'm a huge Conan fan, so a lot of that artwork, a lot of those Savage Sword of Conan magazines and stuff like that, I really love all that stuff too.
King Conan, I even collected King Conan as well.
Yeah. And here is where I will once again, as the audience sighs, saying we've already heard this, I will slip in that I'm related to Robert E. Howard.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It is something that I'm very proud of, despite the fact that he's like a fifth cousin or something like that.
You be you, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've told us a little bit about, kind of the transition from making comics into, making art for RPGs. So kind of the next question related to that, from your perspective so far, what's kind of been the creative process for, producing art for RPGs? How do you collaborate with Levi and Skeeter and Jim and all those people? What does that look like for you?
Well, usually they give me a list of either like a detailed list of like characters or creatures or monsters or in a setting, and each client's kind of different. Like Skeeter just gave me a list and it's like just do whatever, man, and then Jim. When I'm working with Jim, I found out it was a lot easier to have him just draw like a little card, exactly just the scenario and the composition he wants, and then I just do my thing, and then Levi's kind of in between, and it just I aim to please, and whatever they want, it's always cooler to you collaborate and you make something that they envisioned, and you create something that looks totally awesome and cool, and a lot of times you get to exceed their expectations of what it's going to look like or if they envisioned.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you mentioned the process that Jim kind of has, knowing that he's an artist as well. He's done some illustration, even done his own comic. It's interesting to hear how, like he'll send you a drawing almost like a breakdown type situation. Do you find that you like that process, or do you like a little bit more the process of just having a general description that you can then put a little bit more of yourself into? How does that sit with you?
It sits fine with me because Jim knows. Jim's an art director. Jim already knows what the dimensions of the picture is, where it's going to go in the book.
Yep.
So it's just best that way, because that way I can take the layout, and then I can just do my style and my thing and just make it, do Ed on there. As opposed to sometimes with like Skeeter, I don't know if he knew where the stuff was going or not, or he might have, but he didn't give me any dimensions. So you just draw whatever you want. It doesn't bother me either way.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're happy and I'm happy at the same time, it works out great.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Skeeter would never do this because he's a professional and knows what he's doing, but it reminds me of one of the stories that Larry Elmore told me when he was on the show, when he was doing some of those early D&D books. The editorial staff, which was still kind of figuring it out themselves as far as putting together what an RPG book is supposed to look like, they'd give him just like a pencil and ink drawing that would be like maybe, I don't know, this big, not a very big piece of art, and say, we want like an army sieging a castle in this, and he would have to be like, okay guys, it's it's a little tiny picture, just kind of a throwaway thing to stick. I can't, that's not going to work. And so it's
you just have to be honest with your client and let them know, And it's also a learning experience, because I feel like working with a client is almost like taking a college course. You don't know the relationship you're going to have, about how what they're going to be like, and what they're going to be a stickler on, or what how they're going to react to certain things until after your first test. And I consider that to be like your first piece of art you make for them, or your first job. Like when I was in college, that's I always dreaded until after the first test. After I get the first test done of all the classes I was taking at once, because I was working full time and I was going to school full time. So out of 4 classes, I knew which ones I didn't have to study that hard for, and the ones I had to study harder for because of after those tests, and the other ones I could pass by actually paying attention in class, and the other ones I would actually have to study the books to pass. And I feel like that's almost like talking to a client, like Jim would be one of the people you have to study the books for, because he's already got the dimensions and everything for the art to be, as opposed to like working with Levi and Skeeter. I get to the point where I'm like, I'm not drawing stuff itty bitty, because it's ridiculous, and I draw stuff on like 9x12 paper or Bristol board. And that way you can still put in detail that's going to be believable, and they're not getting, they're getting the most for their money, because I'd hate to draw something like you were talking about, Larry Airbo was talking about, is like a 2 inch by 3 inch thing, and then and you fill all that in, it's like you lose all the detail and all the stuff what I like to call is selling it, like all the stuff that's like the little rocks on the ground, or the stuff scrawled on a table, instead of just having a flat table with nothing on it. The little things that make it look lived in, the environments look lived in and real.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up those little details, because I'm not by any stretch of the imagination an artist. If you put a drawing board in front of me, I would not know what to do with it, but I do paint my miniatures. And one thing I found that I get especially proud of with my miniatures are those little tiny details that I stick in there just to make something look a little bit more authentic to its real world counterpart. The best example I can think of is I recently painted a warlock miniature, and I had him holding his contract, which I did a little bit of text on the contract, but I also put a bloody handprint where he cut his hand and signed his deal with the devil. And I was very proud of that little tiny detail that you can just barely see in the picture that I took of him and put on Instagram.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about when I mean like selling the illustration or selling the thing. Like, I always hate when people when you read a comic book and their walls, they don't have any trim on the walls or any baseboards or any pictures hanging up or anything. It's just a flat wall with a door, and it's all drawn with ruler, and they don't even have the trimming around the door, or the door inset or the hinges. And I was like, all that stuff, I think you need to sell, like I said, I call it selling the idea. And exactly what I was talking, like you said, the handprint on there and stuff, or just the one little thing of brass on there to make the buckle on a belt look real, and
Yeah, and for RPG art, that kind of stuff is especially important in my opinion, because the art that you find in RPG books is there to serve as inspiration for the game master in the world that they're creating. So if your art can have those things that show, okay, this thing that's in this book, it's not just a stat block. It is a thing with a place in this very real world that I have to play in or make my players want to play in. And seeing these kind of details, all these things around, gives me a degree of inspiration, or a degree more inspiration for the stories that I'm going to be telling with my friends in this game.
right. Because that's what you do in the whole game is you collect items, and you want the items to look authentic and have character to them, just like your character. There's people that I haven't done it yet, but there's people that get commissions of just people to draw, of their character with all the items that they have and their special or magic items that they've gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do have to ask this because you've done conventions. I've got friends who will have their art tables at comic book conventions. So I have to ask, when it comes to commissions, what's some of the weirdest stuff that just randos at conventions have asked you to draw?
I've lucked out. I haven't really had that many weird ones. There might be a few times when someone asked me to draw something I've never heard of before, or like I think one of the coolest things I had to draw was it Brotherhood? Was it called the Brotherhood of Steel? Is that from Fallout?
Yep.
Yeah, I had to draw a guy, and he wanted his name on his the guy the requesting it wanted his name somehow painted on the armor and stuff with like a. So I can't remember his name, but I think I used like the anarchy symbol for the A in his name, and I actually used I made it all rusty and just all cool, and he really dug that. I've done some other. I think I've done some Pokemon before. And I think I did. Was it Max Rebo, the piano player dude, and the cantina on Tatooine?
I think yeah.
I've had to draw him before on a. It was a huge piece of paper for all the Star Wars stuff. I think that was me that drew him. Anyway, I really haven't had anything really weird. Like I've heard some women say that they came up and they wanted like porno versions of My Little Pony or something weird like that. So like that, I haven't had that. So me saying that now, which means I'm probably wide open for it. The gods have heard now. So watch out for your next con.
Absolutely. So you haven't encountered me, in other words, because I did that to a good friend of mine, also named Ed. When I first met my wife, who is watching right now, I knew kind of two big things about her, and I wanted to really blow her away with the first Christmas gift that I gave to her. I knew that her favorite superhero was Doctor Strange, and she had this weird obsession with or still has a weird obsession with Alexander Hamilton that I still have not wrapped my head around. And yes, I am talking about the first Secretary of the Treasury, founding father of the United States, Alexander Hamilton.
The founding father of the modern banking.
Yes.
Our whole thing is based on what he created.
Yep.
Brilliant man. Until the accepting the duel.
Yes. But what I did was I went to my friend Ed and I said, "Hey, I'd like to get a commission from you." And it's like, "Okay, cool. What do you want? You want to do color, black and white? How you want to do this?" And I was like, "Okay, I want it to be color, and this is going to be a weird request." And he goes, "You know how many cons I've been to? There's like there's no way you can come up with a weird request. And I go, all right. I want you to do a picture of Doctor Strange and Baron Mordo fighting each other. But Doctor Strange is Alexander Hamilton, and Baron Mordo is Aaron Burr. And he thinks about it for a second, and he goes, that's the weirdest request I've ever had, and I think I can do it, but you were right. I shouldn't have doubted you.
Oh, no, I'd be down with that. That'd be awesome. I don't know, sometimes the weird stuff's way more fun than the regular things. I really don't get a lot of commissions at cons. Most of the stuff I sell is the stuff that I show up with and already have made.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So you don't have a lot of people walking up and asking to draw whatever popular anime character it is this season?
No, I don't. I mean, one of the coolest things I ever had to draw was somebody wanted, there was an old cartoon called The Visionaries. Mm-hmm. And he wanted the one with the gorilla in his chest. And I did that one in watercolor, and that was pretty awesome. But no, I mean, maybe I'm just weird, and so sometimes weird requests aren't that weird because I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds way more fun than drawing Green Lantern.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, with your art style and kind of the stuff that I've seen from you, I would be more inclined to get something that you'd done, one of the robot pictures, or that the comic cover that you are currently working on, that you just recently posted on Facebook that you shared with me earlier today. If I saw stuff like that available at your table, that would be more what I was interested in than seeing if you could draw Batman, even though I love Batman.
Yeah, Batman would be boring to draw. I don't really care.
Yep. Now, Batman as Andrew Jackson? No.
That'd be interesting.
I have fully exhausted my my quota of historical meets superheroes, and Elfie hates Andrew Jackson, so yeah, that's... We're in Tennessee, though, so a lot of us hate Andrew Jackson. But yeah, I mean, so far, the work that you've done in RPGs has been super cool. Is there anything beyond what you've kind of already done in RPGs that you are interested in doing, excited to do, any kind of ground that you haven't covered with the work you've done that you like really want to try to do in like future projects? Is there anything like that?
I would like to eventually get into doing some covers. I mean, I guess I've done covers, but I don't know. Like painting, like with acrylic paint. But we'll see. I'm really enjoying doing RPGs. I like it way better than comics. Because one picture I'm drawing like a giant robot squishing people, or trying to squish tribesmen or whatever, and then the next one I'm drawing undead, a Lich King or something, and then the next time I'm drawing mutants watching adventurers fall into a pit with spikes, and it's I'm not drawing the same character over thousands and thousands of times. I really enjoy doing the RPG work. I would like to do some RPG work for some maybe a robot. We get some robot stuff coming up, but robots, and I wouldn't mind doing some stuff if anyone has anything that's like a Road Warrior Mad Max kind of game.
Gotcha.
I love Roger Miller's those vehicles. To me, the vehicles are the star of the show, and all those costumes and those weirdos and all that. That's the stuff I love, and I love to draw. Besides robots, is just those crazy cars and the mohawks and that 80s kind of diesel punk stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that this is probably a little bit beyond kind of what you've gotten into so far, but has there been any thought in your mind that, once you get the chance to start playing games again or something like that, would there ever be any interest in creating something yourself, as far as this is Ed Bickford's RPG rather than work for hire? This is like from the mind of Ed Bickford comes this game using whatever rule set you enjoy, or a rule set that someone can help you create. It's kind of a reversal of the model that you've worked with right now, where someone comes to you with rules and a setting and asks for art. You would come to them with art and an idea for a world and say, what rules work with this?
I don't know. I'm an art guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even when I collected comics, I wouldn't collect anything that it could have been the best story in the world. That like Neil. Everyone always talked how great Neil Gaiman's Sandman was.
Mm-hmm.
I never read it because I did not like the art, and I would not pick up and collect anything where I didn't like the art in the books.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always an art guy, and I like to make the art. I mean, I don't know if I would have the time to make a game, but or if my ADHD or anything like that would let me focus long enough to make a game like that. But I think if I worked with somebody else or something, like if I partner with Jim or Levi or somebody else that would kind of do the writing, where I would have to do all the writing and stuff and just be the idea guy, I think that'd be kind of neat. But I'm just like I always tease my wife and just tell her I don't know anything. I'm just the pretty artist. I'm just
Yeah. It's something. Again, this literally just occurred to me as we were talking. It's like I said, it's kind of a backwards view of how RPGs are traditionally created, because usually it's here's a rule set that someone has created or applied to a certain setting, and then they'll go solicit art from freelancers or their friends or stuff like that to fill the book with, to kind of give birth to that reality. The only thing I can think of that's even in that same vein would be something like, I think it's Tales from the Loop, which is, I can't remember. It's Simon Stalenhag's art. Was kind of an inspiration for a tabletop game, but they didn't work directly with him. So it would almost be something like that. But
that sounds familiar. Isn't that a movie too, or a TV show now on Netflix?
Yeah, there's a TV show on Amazon Prime, but it's all based on this Swedish artist who drew. It's really interesting. I'm sure you've probably seen it on social media, but it's basically kind of urban and suburban decay, but there's also like rusty, decaying giant robots off in the distance most of the time.
Oh yeah, I'm totally down with that. Yeah, there's like I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. I just but that sounds very familiar. I think I just discovered him. I think I started following somebody that was posting his art. I follow like retro sci-fi and 70s sci-fi stuff on Facebook. But yeah, there's I follow one called Gigantic Monsters or something, and it's just they just post like one will be a giant robot and the next will be like Cthulhu rising out of the ocean. It's just like giants and kaiju and stuff like that. But that Tales from the Loop, is that a game or is that a comic?
So there is a book called Tales from the Loop. It is a Amazon Prime TV show, and then there's also a tabletop role-playing game.
Okay, I think I watched a podcast where I think someone mentioned that Tales from the Loop, but I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I mean the game itself, it's that art style also fused with kind of the Stranger Things idea of it's set in the 80s and you're playing as teenagers dealing with kind of the aftermath of a huge sci-fi cataclysm, basically.
Yeah, that sounds totally up my alley. Giant robots and post-apocalypse.
But yeah, I mean, giant robots is definitely something that I love. I mentioned this to you. Two of my favorite movies of all time. One is the animated movie The Iron Giant.
Yeah.
That was a big favorite of mine as a kid. But then the other one that we talked a little bit about is Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow with Jude Law.
Yes.
Also one of my favorite movies of all time.
I saw Sky Captain in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty awesome. It reminded me that like when he lands the plane and the plane's floating in the water in the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of when Luke Skywalker lands on Dagobah looking for Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're fighting on that one walkway, they're fighting the lady, the robot.
Yep.
That looks like an Asian lady. And that reminds me of the fight on that walkway for Darth Vader and him and stuff.
Yep.
It was really cool. Didn't they do all that stuff that was one of the first movies they did everything on a green screen, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that movie came out, I think, a year before Sin City came out, and they were both done on a backlot entirely in front of a green screen. Lots of CGI, lots of style, but not, the animated qualities looked very intentional, and it looked very much like a Max Fleischer cartoon in a lot of ways.
I loved the robots that they showed in that. They were awesome.
Yeah, that whole aesthetic of those like pulp robots. Again, mentioning Max Fleischer, but the Superman cartoons from the 1940s that they would show in theaters before movies. Those robots are also favorites of mine.
I loved Johnny Quest as a kid, and I still do now. And they had the robots and the creepy monsters and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is great. But no, as far as I'm trying to think of RPG settings that would kind of give you a taste of what you're looking for there. One that comes to mind is Rifts. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rifts.
I've heard of it. I've never played it though. But I've looked through a lot of RPG books. Just even when we played D&D, I would just sit there and just look through the monster manuals and stuff, just to look at the art, or the DM, or the player's guide, or just suck in all the art. Just oogle all the artwork in those books. I loved it.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that really does hook people who aren't into the hobby. If you can get some really good art in front of them, that really gets the imagination going. A lot of times that's all it takes, really, is just seeing that image that really kicks into gear the creative process. I know that that's something that really has inspired me just as a creative. One thing, and it's one of the silliest things now that I think back at it, but there's this image that was just a screenshot from a video game that I distinctly remember. The video game was Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. It came out in like 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. So I was 8 or 9 years old when I first saw this image. But it's Indiana Jones in the foreground because the game is perspective behind him. It's a third-person video game. But just in the distance, you see this giant dragon.
Oh, cool.
And it's Indy, and he has this artifact in his hand that's a weapon of some sort. It looks like a throwing star, shuriken, boomerang type thing. But you see that image of the dragon, you see Indiana Jones standing there, and immediately you're like, okay, I know that thing in his hand is cool or whatever. That's a dragon. It's off in the distance. It's gigantic. There's an asymmetry here.
There's a narrative there. And you're just like, you want to find out what's going on.
And that's another thing that Frank Frazetta does very well. You see these images, of Conan with the snake, or even the one that Molly Hatchet used on their album, the
Death Dealer.
Yeah, the Death Dealer. You see these pictures, and you know that Frazetta just painted. This is an image, using just a couple different figures. There might have been a story there, as there is with some of the Conan stuff. Maybe there wasn't. It was just what was in Frazetta's imagination, or what he was commissioned to paint. But the image itself tells its own story contained in that image, and stuff like that in RPG art, which a lot of RPG art is built upon. That's the kind of stuff that I really love to look at and love to see in my RPG books.
Yeah, I love Warhammer 40K art. That's those Space Marines and all the Terminators and all that. That stuff is just awesome. I wish I would have thought of that.
And that would be very interesting to see. Obviously Games Workshop has a house style, and that's, we can talk about that in a little bit, house styles and stuff like that. But even just like seeing you do a series of like, here's Space Marines on Land Raider or something like that, seeing you do the machinery that they have would be super interesting.
Yeah, I've come to realize, because at first when I started doing this, I was worried about some of the stuff I did, because I was thinking in my head that they were hiring me to draw like Frazetta or Vallejo. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, we want you to do you. Draw the way you would draw mutants or whatever. So once I got that down, it's been a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And how about the new Dune? Does that not look pretty awesome coming out? Oh my God, that looks so good.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about the movie or the RPG?
The movie, the new one with I don't know the kid's name, but it's got like I can't think of the girl's name. It starts with a Z.
Zendaya.
Huh?
Zendaya.
Yeah, her, and it's got like Dave Bautista's in it, and who else was in it? I thought there's a whole bunch of people in
Jason
that movie.
Momoa.
It looks awesome. Because I remember watching the first one when I first watched it, because I put it off forever. And then when I watched it, and when he finally does that, what's the one saying they got so they could shoot lasers? Or was it Paulo Deeb or whatever he named himself? And they're on those worms and stuff. And I was like, that was awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm super excited for that movie. But there's also a company called Modiphius in England. They have the Conan the Barbarian license. They've got currently the Star Trek license for gaming. They're putting out a Dune RPG to kind of coincide with the new movie coming out as well.
Huh. Wow. I never saw. I like the Schwarzenegger ones. I never saw the one with. Was it Jason Momoa? Did he play the
Conan? Yep.
The new one.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that one. I think it's on. It might be on. It might still be on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it on a streaming service. I have not watched that movie myself either. I've kind of been warned away from it.
Yeah, it just feels like the newer stuff. I mean, even though they have bigger budgets and they have all the more special effects, it's going to be really hard to beat Conan the Barbarian. With Schwarzenegger and all the cast and that, and how they did all of that. It was just such a great movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, one question I have for you, just kind of related to art in RPG books. I've recently been thinking a lot about this, and I've had a couple guests bring up stuff like this. When it comes to the big guys, like Games Workshop, like you mentioned, Wizards of the Coast with D&D, they will put out books that have a very uniform style to them. A lot of the art is very similar looking, even if it's different artists of kind of rendering it. It all has a very polished, very clean look to it, and it all looks the same. But when you look at kind of private press stuff, OSR stuff that's coming out on Kickstarter, stuff like Frog God and Levi at Planet X and Skeeter are doing, you've got a mix of different art styles, all that are in the same world but give different images, evoke different emotions, and kind of, go for different reactions from piece to piece. So I guess my question in all of that is, have you developed a preference for seeing things look uniform in a book or seeing different interpretations on the different things in the world with different artists kind of, taking on the same material? Have you developed a preference for that? Have you thought about any of that?
I haven't really thought about it, but I do appreciate if an artist gets to be himself and not have to do a certain house style. Mm-hmm. Like in comics, you have the DC has a house style, and I think Marvel and although they have a house, and I really don't appreciate that. I'd rather see the artist in their personality show out through their art, and just their different. I don't know. I think Levi and Jim and Skeeter, and they all think about, because they all employ different artists for their books, and they all think about what they like. I can do a clean style, and I can also do a pretty rough style with some brushes and whatnot. And it depends what they want the picture to invoke, like you said. And it's or if you want it to be brutal or gritty, because it's for some reason you want the image to be gritty, and then have another one that's like a clean little palace kind of thing, and have another artist do that, because they have really nice clean lines, and they're really meticulous about everything, as opposed to someone that just uses a brush and just lets it fly and looks something like Ashley Wood or something, compared to like a Jeff Darrow. And those are comic book people, not game people I'm talking about. But I'd rather see the artists be themselves and not have to be confined into a little box and do something else.
Gotcha. So you'd rather someone get to do something kind of like what Bill Sienkiewicz does with his work.
Yeah. I love Bill Sienkiewicz. His stuff is awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of his stuff can be a little bit hit or miss for me. It really depends on what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
When he did a Daredevil graphic novel, and I don't think his art is particularly well suited to the world of Daredevil, because Daredevil's very very street level, very pulp, and I don't get that from his work. But what I saw him do on like New Mutants, when he would draw Warlock, that kind of stuff from Bill Sienkiewicz I really enjoy, and Demon Bear and all the different cool, crazy things he did in the 80s on New Mutants. That kind of stuff from him I really like, but when it comes to like a street level hero like Daredevil, I don't think he's necessarily the best choice.
I can see that. I mean, it's like he's definitely not a house style.
Yeah.
I think because Ashley Wood has that kind of style as well. Mm-hmm. And he's one of my favorite artists, because he does painting, and he also I think for a while there he just let go. He didn't do pencils. He just did straight inks. And he did the what's it called? Koanai? Is it Koanai that published Metal Gear Solid?
Yeah.
Yeah, his stuff in that's amazing. I love it. So I'm also a painter at heart. So anytime I get to see somebody paint, it's always a joy for me.
Absolutely. Now, again, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, while we're talking about comic artists, because I find sometimes his stuff can be a little bit divisive, but would you consider yourself, even though his style is very clean and very Norman Rockwell-like, I suppose. Would you consider yourself a fan of Alex Ross?
When I was younger and not a trained artist, I thought it was pretty awesome. But I was looking at his stuff lately. It just kind of, it just bores me.
Mm-hmm.
He's got skill, and he's got great skill, but it just bores me because he doesn't seem to. He's just painting the same thing over and over, just the same. He's got those, was it 1940s kind of, the strong guy from the traveling road show. Everyone's got that barrel chested look, and I've read I think Justice. I think I read Justice. Was it Justice that was?
Mm-hmm.
And I read that. It was really good, and the artwork is amazing, but he's just still doing the same thing. And I like pushing myself, and I like seeing somebody push and keep doing stuff. And that's why I think I like Sienkiewicz, because he's never, you're never gonna go, oh, he's doing the same stuff as he did like 10 years ago, because it's gonna look completely different now than it was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I just like artists that push it and keep doing stuff. But there's some people that know their bread and butter, and they just, like Alex Ross. That's his bread and butter to do that stuff. But it just, after a while, it just bores me. Kind of like music. I don't ever want to hear Tom Sawyer again by Rush ever again. I've heard it so many times on the radio. It's not fun, Now, Working Man, I'll listen to that all the time.
I have that album.
I had the cassette.
Moving Pictures. I'm a huge Rush fan.
But I just don't want to hear. I'm not saying anything bad about him. I just don't want to hear Tom Sawyer ever again, because I've heard it so many times.
Yeah,
again, I feel like the same way about Alex Ross. When I see his art now, I'm like, yeah, I've already heard that song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a huge Rush fan. There's all kinds of craziness even beyond Tom Sawyer, but even as a huge Rush fan, I will grant you that one particular song of theirs, which is not the best song on that album. The best song on that album is Limelight.
That's good. I like YYZ too.
Yeah. But yes, that is the one that everyone's kind of latched onto, and as excited as I get when I hear the keyboard and the drums and the intro, I understand where you're coming from.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear anything from Led Zeppelin 4 anymore. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
Well, maybe no. I would take. I don't want to hear Black Dog ever again. That's one song. Mm-hmm. I like Misty Mountain Hop. I could listen to that. It's a good song. But like Black Dog, I'm like, please don't play that again.
Mm-hmm. There was a radio station. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there was a radio station there that for some reason they played the hell out of Fool in the Rain. Like all the time. And I don't like that song at all.
Who's that by?
Led Zeppelin. It's one of their like weird folky songs from kind of their late career. I really don't like that song.
I don't know. I don't recall it.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more of it sounds like something like from White Snake or something. I remember when I was a kid growing up that got tired of hearing "Who Could It Be Now" by Men at Work,
mm-hmm.
because I've heard it so many times on the radio. But now I kind of like. I'm glad to hear it. It's still a good song. I think but there's some certain songs you just don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I had one of those, and I can't think of the name of this song because even though I'm 25, my knowledge and appreciation of music stops right around the year I was born, which is really weird for me to say, but that's just, what I'm into. I like stuff from pretty much the 1950s up through the 90s. But there are songs that we'll just hear constantly at the grocery store, and I'll look at my wife and be like, I hate this song. And she won't even notice that it's there because we just hear it so often. I'm just like, no, I really hate this song. I cannot tolerate this noise anymore. But yeah, I mean, as far as Alex Ross goes, there are two things that I really value his artwork for. One of them is I think he's great on covers. You know, he's great at getting someone to pick up a comic book because, you know, they see a beautiful picture of a superhero that looks
he's a
heroic.
whiz with watercolors. I mean, that's all watercolor. So,
But all of his stuff, you know, looks super heroic and stuff like that. So it's eye catching. And then I also think he's really good at showing, in his own kind of like 1940s, 1950s aesthetic way, what some of these superheroics would look like in a semi-real world. And what it would look like if there was actually a big dude in a bat suit standing on a street with real people. And so in the way that he's kind of like a concept artist, I like. But as an interior storyteller artist, I mean, Marvel's is good. It's over on my shelf, but I can definitely see how it would be boring, because even Marvel's feels like a photo album rather than a comic book.
right.
And really, like you said, what that gets down to is, you know, it's a beautiful picture, but there needs to be something that makes the world feel real and engaging, and a single image needs to be able to tell a story in and of itself. And because, you know, Jim mentioned this, the covered Scientific Barbarian #3 was the inspiration for the adventure that he wrote within it. So that's something that I really feel like you are very, very good at doing with your artwork.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So you saw that's me on the Scientific Barbarian 3.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The picture of the robot holding up the K. Yeah, I love that stuff. I love it.
Yeah, it's got that old school kind of melodrama kind of thing going on there, and that's the one thing I don't like. I mean, Alex Ross was cool because when he first did it, he went back in time and he kind of took all the bells and whistles off all the costumes and stuff and made them look like they were actually there in the 40s. But that was cool because it was a contrast of what was actually out then. And now I feel like there's a lot of stuff it's just and you need to have something that's like, I don't know, that catches people's eyes and the details, and something that's awesome where someone's like, oh wow. I mean, look at the Space Marines, you know, going back to that, look at all the details and everything on all that stuff. Now imagine if somebody goes, what if they made it in the 1940s and they took all the cool stuff off and just made it plain and it looked like the Iron Man from the first movie, you know? I mean, at first that would seem kind of neat because of the contrast. But then after 20 years of that Iron Man looking dude, you're like, nah, you know, maybe it's time to pump it up a little bit, put some detail, put some design into it, you know, some really. And I think that's one of the things you need is just a good sense of design for stuff like that.
And then, I mean, for anyone who's friends with you on Facebook or has seen kind of the images that you've posted so far, the variant cover for that comic that's coming to Kickstarter that you shared with me today, I've been thinking about that piece of art all day, and that's not hyperbole. When you showed that to me, I was like, oh God. And again, just for anyone who hasn't seen it, you've got two spacemen, basically, or a spaceman and a spacewoman, taking cover behind a mountain with their laser guns ready. There's a planet kind of off in the distance. Everything's in like darker yellows and burnt oranges, like a sunset. And there's spaceship off in the distance, and a gang of aliens with their own laser weapons. Looks like they're coming right around the corner, and there's panic in the faces of the the space troopers as they figure out, what to do with these things coming. And again, it's an image, it's a story in and of itself, and it makes the imagination go, how did they get here? What's going to happen next? What happens when they turn the corner? Who's going to see who first? There's tension, there's atmosphere, there's drama. And that's really what kind of makes captivating art, both for comics, comic covers, and for RPGs.
Exactly.
Cool.
If I ever, I like to go to Pinterest and look at all those old covers for sci-fi and pulp and all that. There's an endless amount there for anyone to get inspired by stuff, or just for a layout or a design, or even for fonts, for if you want your stuff to look old. And I do a lot of research on all the old stuff out there, and now and then it'll be months or so, and now and I'll just pop in on Pinterest and see what's new and check out a few new things. For all that, I was trying to keep up, and I had a Bill Sienkiewicz board, and I had a Juan Jimenez board, which I love Juan Jimenez, and I have like a Kobe Whitmore, and my favorite artist is Robert McGinnis. If you know who that is.
Let's see. I don't know if I've...
Have you ever seen any of the old James Bond movie posters?
Yes.
He did those.
Gotcha.
It was either him or Robert McGuire did them, but most of the ones I'm talking about is McGinnis. Mm-hmm. McGinnis did a lot of pulp covers as well. He's my favorite, and then that's another thing that got me into it is because I just remember all that art. I was like, how come no one ever makes comics to look like this? And once you start making the art, I'm like, I know why, because it would take forever to do 30 pages of art to look like this. Mm-hmm. But I just go on there and just oogle all that beautiful artwork and paintings and stuff for sci-fi. And I think there was one at DEF CON, was it DEF CON 4 or something like that? And I remember I had that book, and I loved it. I didn't even read the book. I just lugged it around in my book bag for like a week or two, checked it out from the library at school, and I just lugged it around because I liked the cover. I didn't even read the book. I just would sit there and stare at the cover. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even read the book with all the John Berkey stuff in it. I just would flip through it and look at all the sci-fi artwork inside of it. It was amazing. I should find that book and get it from Amazon. That's what I should do.
Yeah, now I'm looking at all this Robert McGinnis James Bond art because, again, I'm a huge Bond fan, so paying closer attention to some of this stuff. The From Russia with Love poster.
I like the one where he's in the hot tub with all the women.
Mm-hmm.
The skin tones and how it's all laid out. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the You Only Live Twice. That's the one.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Ed, this has been a great conversation, talking a lot about, art and what it brings out of us and how it applies to role-playing games. So thank you for coming on the show tonight and talking through some of that stuff with me. What I like to do at the end of the show is give every guest the chance to, plug anything they want to plug, promote anything coming up. So, social media, obviously, any projects you have coming up that you want to talk about. The floor is yours. Go for it. And everyone listen to what Ed has to say here.
I think we have... do we have one more day of Phylactery 3 on Kickstarter?
Let me take a look here.
Or is that over? I can never keep up with everything because I have more than one book. I think at the beginning of the month I had 3 books on Kickstarter that I worked on.
Yeah, so we're kind of in the last day of Phylactery 3.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's still on Kickstarter. And I think Scientific Barbarian just ended last week, didn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we just have Phylactery for now. Levi and I work with Planet X Games all the time, and Levi and I he showed me a list of the stuff he has planned, so you'll definitely see us working together a lot. And Skeeter's already reached out to me for stuff again, and I know Jim's already mentioned some stuff, and then I keep on. Each time I do a book, there's someone else always messages me on Facebook asking me, is like, hey, would you draw something for my book too? I'm like, sure. So I have quite a few people. I'm just waiting, to hear back from them whenever they figure out what they want or whatnot. But I'm a Edwin Bickford on Twitter, and I think is it the same thing on Instagram?
I think on Instagram you are at Metal Robot.
Okay, yeah. I'm at Metal Robot at Instagram. And then I'm just Ed Bickford on Facebook, and I think I changed it to Edwin B. Bickford the Third on LinkedIn, which I don't know. I don't get LinkedIn, but I just started getting back on Twitter to post stuff. Which after this, I probably post that picture of the cover I've been working on. But I plan on doing a lot more books, and I think I just heard from Casey like last week, and I guess they're since COVID's starting, I think we're starting to come out of the woods. It sounds like, so they might be the projects will start picking up again soon, and people are going to start getting work again soon too. So I plan. I see a busy future for me, and RPGs, and I'm probably not going to do. I have one comic I have to finish, and after that, it's I don't know if I'm going to do anything or not.
Gotcha.
But I really appreciate having me on here.
Oh, no problem at all. And I know the campaign is already wrapped, but it'll be delivering at some point this month, so I'll have more of your work to look at in Glimmering Crypt of the Ion King.
I don't remember I don't know if I did anything for that or not. I can't remember.
Your name is on the Kickstarter page, so if you didn't do anything for that, you might want to have a conversation with Levi.
What now?
Your name's on the Kickstarter page as far as contributing artist for Glimmering.
Yeah, he's gonna be mad at me. Levi's gonna give me. He's gonna harass me because I don't remember the art I did for it. Sorry, Levi.
Sounds like in Texas I'll be refereeing a fight on the con floor.
Maybe.
All right, well, Ed, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you. And, yeah, as far as what's coming up this week, guys, this Saturday, I finally have the missing piece. I've got my capture card here, so we can finally do an actual painting stream that does not involve my camera freezing. So I'm super excited about that. That's going to be fun. We'll be painting this big dragon that I have behind me. If I can move my melon head out of the way. That dragon sitting on the table over there will be done in the style of Brahm as Boris of Tyr from Dark Sun. So that'll be a ton of fun. And then next week I will be going through the one-shot that I am preparing for North Texas RPG Con to be run in Savage Worlds. We'll be talking a lot about that, some of my ideas behind that, and what I am looking to accomplish with that particular adventure. So until then, guys, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you next time.